hold it. Hold. Sorry. You don't want to? We'll change it for next meeting. Okay. We'll change it for next meeting.
No, it's my fault. Yeah, next meeting we will.
I call this meeting to order. Would you follow along with the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Fenton.
Here.
Fenton.
Here.
Denham. Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
Rodriguez. LeBlanc. Oh, Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Tonight, we're going to get an update from the 76 CID. So this item is an update on the 76 Entertainment Community Improvement District. We'll begin with an introduction by Kathy Stepp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. It is a great day for Branson for us to be able to bring to you the update of all the hard work that's been going on with the 76 CID committee members and internal staff, figuring out where we've been, where we've come from on this very important project to the city, and where we are today, and of course, where we're going tomorrow. So I'm not going to talk very long at all. In fact, all I'm going to say is how much I want to express my appreciation to the 76 CID board members. They give a lot of their own personal and professional time that they could be doing other things, but they give it back to our community and invest their business experience in decisions that they're helping us to make as we move this important project forward. I want to give a hats off to Michael and to his team as well for the really hard work that they're doing, and to our finance team for the hard work that they do as well, making sure, again, that we're all moving in the same direction and moving as best we can at the speed of business when it comes to a project of this size. So Holly's going to be here to give a little bit of a background because a lot of time has transpired from the original passage of this particular CID, give a little bit of a historical perspective, and then again, of course, where we're looking to go moving forward. So thank you very much.
And Holly, before you get started, I just want to share a few words. I've been on the 76 CID committee for many years, and I want to say that the members of the CID staff, the committee members, the amount of hours and caring that they've put into this project is to be highly appreciated from our community. This is a multi-million-dollar investment. They're taking the time and doing it right because this is the long-term future and direction of our city. So I just wanted to publicly say that I've been involved with these meetings and I truly appreciate the leadership from the 76 CID committee. So thank you for joining us. So our first presenter is Holly Dodge.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, board members. You'll have to excuse me a bit. I am pinch hitting for Joe Lauber. The 76 Entertainment District CID, and it's still not flipping. I have a beautiful, so I didn't get to do the maps or the illustrations. I just have words, so, and a whole lot of them on one page. But this concept and this entertainment CID, Community Improvement District, began with our office. Joe came down and got involved in January of 2015, worked with the city and the stakeholders in creating this CID based on an idea that within what we call segment 3, which is the middle section of 76, that entity was going to be our starter. So in feeding that starter, then you would see the development of a jewel of Branson in creating this draw area, which is very important for the vitality of Branson itself. So the three were the voters who also initiated the petition, which is required for a CID. The initial segment 3 had 26 property owners. From those 26 property owners, in that concept, the petition was started with those property owners, and once established, these property owners were the voters for the sales tax. So it's a self-controlled, although all overview is by the city and controlled by the city, but a CID creates a package or almost a state within the city. And that state within the city first has their petition that directs the extent of the area. When this was initially determined, there was a belief that it would expand, that it would have an annexation, much like a city annexation. But the first act then after the petition was that the CID was established by the Board of Aldermen pursuant to ordinance, which is required by the statute. Next step was the establishment as voted on just by those within that segment 3 for the 1% sales tax. Then as they brought in other segments 1 and 2 and 4 and 5, once they brought those in, it's not requiring another vote. So once you've established the sales tax for that CID, as the CID expands, there's not a revote. They're buying into that sales tax, and that sales tax is only within that district. As the excitement occurred and this began to snowball, there was an expenditure from the city of over $16 million. And this was before there was a cooperative agreement. So there was an idea, there was a funding mechanism, and there was a desire and a concept, but there wasn't in place a cooperative agreement. So that was negotiated and put in place in April of 2018. When that cooperative agreement was created, it had to address the funding that was spent previously by the city before they negotiated, and that's why it took 2 years to get that cooperative agreement, because there was a cart before the horse. So in June of 2020, as planned from the beginning, that's when they annexed segments 1 and 2 and 4 and 6 as approved by this board. When you look at the cooperative agreement, it very clearly delineates what the CID's duties are and what the city's duties and responsibilities are. And they're laid out in this screen. Essentially, the CID's most important obligation is to keep the CID sales tax revenues flowing. So they keep their businesses intact so that there is a sales tax, so that there is an income that comes in. Excuse me. Then, nearly as important is the CID's obligation to provide the funding for the CID project. So at that point, there had already been an expenditure of over $16 million, an agreement to repay the $9 million, and the annexation of, in 2020, of the other 2 segments. The city primarily is responsible, and pursuant to the cooperative agreement, not pursuant to the statute, you guys are required to approve the budget. By statute, you look at the budget, you give written responses. The cooperative agreement was much more clarified because of the sticky beginning, and so that was solidified within the agreement. However, it really wasn't enforced. So there was not the administration, which is the city's responsibility, to ensure that the money, the funds are administered appropriately. That there was a big disconnect. And The CID had limited authority to review the CID public improvements. They were part of the creative development aspect of Layer 2, the essential improvements, and the gateway and icons. But all other aspects of the design and construction of the CID public improvements were not subject to CID review and approval. And what a lot of this is based on is they went up to, in the agreement, the Exhibit F, they went up to Kansas City. Kansas City has a downtown CID. Their downtown CID has what we call the bumblebees. They're in the black and yellow, and they go and they're cleaning up. So they're keeping that area clean. The idea with this CID was to make it a situation where you go to the hotel, you stay in that area, and you expend within that CID. So here's my whiz-bang picture. So this illustrates to you how the money is supposed to come down, and that is stated in the contract in the cooperative agreement in 4.3A. And 4.3A makes it clear that the funds come in, and so you're going to think about the rainy, Joe suggested you think about a mousetrap. I think with these buckets, and maybe because it's where I was raised, but when the roof starts leaking, you got to catch the water. This really is a better concept, so I think if you think in terms of we want to use every bit of the water is the money. So the money comes in to the system. At the very beginning, if you look at the top, that's going to correlate to the payment of $10,000 to the district's discretionary funds account in accordance with the district annual budget. So that's the first point where the money comes off of. Then it's for actual city administration, up to 2% of the funds. So it's not a definite 2% of the funds. You have to show that it's the actual expenditure. So that takes care of your first pot. Then you've got half the money goes on this side and half the money goes on this side. When those balances go out, this one over here is, I'm sorry, I should go over it. It goes in this order. So you go on this side, and half of the tax revenue goes first to your operating costs right here. Of course, we always pay for the operating costs first, then reimbursement to the city of the actual operating costs advanced by the city prior to the time of the district. That's that $9 million that was agreed to be paid back. So that's this pot right here. Then your next pot is the actual costs incurred by the city in the formation of the district. The next step is the other half. So half went here, half went here. This half is supposed to be for tax revenues used to pay debt service on obligations. The idea was that when this district was created, you only have the funds that which are coming in. So it's not enough to do a big project to pay the kind of bills. So there would be a bond or some type of obligation by the CID with the assistance and approval of the board that would allow for the use of funds to come in early. That's not what happened. What happened was the city paid the $9 million, and we're waiting here for it to be paid out. Here, the money just kept, and it's a big pot because the pot just kept accruing. The next step was any remaining funds. So when this is full, it then goes into this bucket, and this bucket is the remaining funds allocated to fund the construction of the project on a pay-as-you-go. So not paying debt. When there's extra, it goes here for ongoing payment. That's the piece that was missing. That's why we were indebted $6 million, because prior administrations did not strongly enforce the cooperative agreement. That led to the CID pooling the funds, or a large accumulation of the funding that fell to the right and weren't used. Had the prior administrations properly enforced the cooperative agreement, the city's $9.2 million would have been paid off by now, and it's not. But what we're here today to celebrate is the fact that this budget is a very important tipping point we can see the top of the mountain at this point, because in this new budget, there's an agreement to pay back to the city that which had been agreed upon back in 2018, to put back in the 6 million, but it's also about making the decisions of shovels in the ground where you can actually see the payment of this plan because of its expansion and its size, to see real changes in this area.
We'll now hear from Michael. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. So going forward, she gives me a hard time about my beautiful pictures and colors, so here they come. So what I wanted to highlight here was the proposed different boundaries that you have throughout the district. If you're not familiar with it, the area, how big it is, and where it goes. She highlighted that in June of 2020, 211 private property owners and 963 acres of land ends up being segments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 from end to end. So it's divided into roughly 6 segments, and it's 3 miles of road that we're talking about today. This is from the cooperative agreement, and this was the original drawing. It was a little bit hard to see, but you know, it definitely laid out some kind of stopping points where it's not, oh, this street exactly here. So if it's the world's largest toy museum, or the Branson Ferris Wheel, or Presley's Country Jubilee, Branson's Auto Farm and Museum, it's kind of important to remember those details because that's how we talk about the areas that are there. Some of our goals is kind of important to come back to is why invest all this capital and money into your streets, and why are you doing this to really do change, and why is the city behind it? Number one, the city wanted to relocate utilities underground. Your tornado showed the importance of that, the infrastructure that's there. Fire services with water main lines that we can put in, 12-inch lines on both sides are very important. The second thing we're really looking for is to enhance the safety for pedestrians. I think that's super important. It's one of the initiatives that holds true and dear to my heart, and you'll see us spend a lot of money on making sure that our pedestrians are safe. One life saved is really, really important. The vehicle traffic, right? You know, making sure that we try to cut down on traffic in any way we can. If you make walkable paths, that helps out quite a bit for that. Grow businesses, and then update the visual appeal. As many people have said online and so on and so forth, is some parts of the strip look a little tired, and we're here to help that, and you're gonna invigorate that. That's kind of what this picture shows. This is kind of interesting from when I came to the city 2 short years ago. This is how that area looked. So you had a vacant lot that ended there, and from the very top, I know Cheddar's name's already there, but you see other businesses saw the seed that was put there, and then you get to see this today. So as you see today, you see, what do we see in a Google image? But we see the families walking and using it. And it's surprising to me. I didn't really believe that people with the terrain that we have here would park their car and walk from business to business to see what's going on. But if you look at the Google images, they're everywhere. That seed also helps out to take a look at another business that's right next door in another vacant lot. So that's soon to be our new Chick-fil-A in town, or our second Chick-fil-A. So those are tax revenues that are there. The other thing to really recognize here is that those businesses bought in. Even though being corporate businesses, they bought into making sure the duck bank was right, the street was right, the sidewalks were correct, and they bought in with the city. So not necessarily an outlay of money by the city or the 76 CID, but they believed in it, and all they needed was a little bit of guidance. What we're talking about today is segment 1 and 2, and so that's what we've been working on in the background. So segment 1 and 2 is from Shepherd of the Hills. The midway point is the toy museum that we kind of highlighted before. The very end is the Ferris wheel. This is the next section that we're going to try to spend some money on and make wonderful things happen. The creation of a great connection to 76 should be by car and foot. Right now out there, it's just by car. There is no real foot traffic if you look at. There's some steep drop-offs off the side. I wanted to highlight where we are in plans. So these aren't ready for public viewing, but for this instance, just to show you that the utility corridor, we've been working underground for quite some time, making sure that the utilities, the duck banks that are there, what's inside of a duck bank? What is a duck bank? Well, you have a 12-inch water line on both sides of the street. You have lines for all electricity companies to get underneath. There's multiples in there, and we also have extra duct banks that are in there that allow for fiber cable going through there. So that's a preliminary drawing of that. The cooperative agreement, so this was the original timeline that's inside the document. As you can see, that was kind of a bust, or time has gone by. So we updated that a little bit. So segment 1 and 2, late 2021 was the start of the design, and we hope by spring of 2024 the design is finished up, and you see shovels in the ground in spring, summer, and fall of 2024. So that's for segment 1 and 2 together. Segment 3, you know, the beginning to the end, the design was in 2015, January 2017, and then finish was 2022. So that segment took a little bit. We tried to outline what we thought was the most probable cause of moving forward, making sure that design is moving just a little bit ahead of construction. So the problem with design is if you get too far out in design and your construction's lacking 3 or 4 years behind, you don't know exactly what's going to happen with cost escalation, and we'll see that here in just a moment. This was the estimated project cost of 1 through 6, and I broke it down a little bit different than the actual document that's there. So you have the green, and then you'll have 2 gray boxes that kind of show the segments as we put them down. What's interesting about that is the estimated cost was thought to be about $15,382,695 for the original. By doing a little bit of interpolation, we came up with these numbers, and we're not going to go all the way back through, but it's roughly 2 times the amount. So you're looking at $30 million that's sitting there. There's some importance of that number of $30 million because when we brought this to the 76 corridor group, or the board of directors there, we have other things that are outside that number that aren't taken into account. The water line for $4.3 million on that is taken on by the city. And there's also the bottom, which is the WOW segments that are in there. The board unanimously approved a $32.5 million resolution, and there were all 6 in favor and 0 against. That was presented to the board. May 31st was the probable cost that we're sitting right here. I will leave that up next to Ben.
Michael, can I just jump in real quick? One thing I wanted to point out is it was really important to us, this administration, to make sure that we had a handle on what today's costs were going to be. We knew based upon looking at what the projections were for the other segment that was done and seeing what the real costs ended up being. And now we've had many things the outside world is inflicting upon us since that on top of it. So we've got post-COVID pricing for materials and labor. And we didn't pause the project. I mean, we kept working on, you know, different aspects with our design teams as well. But it was really important to us, Michael in his role, which was new for him, me coming into this role, that we understood how projects like this work and that we really had a grasp on what the financial impacts were going to be, because you all needed, as public officials, to have a clear and concise understanding of what the real investment is going to be based on what the original projections were. Thank you, Michael.
Hey, Michael. Real quick, bud. I'm trying to keep a bunch of different numbers in my head, and I'm not trying to look too far in the past because we're looking forward on this project, right? Original budget being 80 million, it ballooned to 200 million, and then we're talking about we spent 16. And Ben can help me on this. I thought it was a little closer to 20, but maybe we have a little bit more clarity on it. Okay, 25, all right. When I speak to citizens and I talk about where we've been on this project, how we're changing things and how we're moving forward, what did we get out of that 16 million? I like to think it wasn't just all change orders. I mean, was there duct work that we got?
Sure, absolutely. You got segment 3 was completely finished under that. You got a master plan that was used to help build this plan that's there. Could they have done management a little bit better of it? Absolutely. And, you know, the past is the past and the future is the future. But, you know, I appreciate Kathy's comments. It's very important to me that I came to the city and I said, what is the budget for this? Are we building a stick house or are we building a mansion? She always laughs that I say that. What are we building? Are we building something in between? And let's define that number. And so we took a pause and we really worked towards that number in all of our meetings and why and where. This time it's the plan's going to go out. You're spending about $2 million for the design. You're $1 million into it, and then you're going to take it out to bid, and it's either going to go or it's not. So you can take it back out in the bid, and that's the way to control your actual costs, is to have a great plan in great details to your plan, and that's what takes in large public projects a long time to create, so, and do it right, you know, you need to do it right, do it once and do it right.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Michael. Okay, Ben.
Thank you, Mayor. And also, I've been involved in this project for only a year. You know, when Michael came on is when we started seeing the whole group, and I think the CID could probably say the same thing. We can actually see and smell dirt being moved, I mean, mentally, because the more he worked on numbers, the closer we got. And we're here today with you. So I wanted to kind of end the presentation just kind of going over some numbers. It's number season anyway, right? You're going to be talking about a budget here in a few weeks, so this is perfect timing. What this chart shows is the columns are the revenue that we've got on the very far left. It's around 5.5 million in revenue we expect to receive this year. I'm sorry, 5.5 next year, based on our current collections. And then the out years we've got grown at 1%. The big deal in this chart, it shows the columns as the revenue coming in, and an estimate of the bond debt service is that line, that top green line. So for the board and public, you can see that there's plenty of money to plug this 30 million in and get going. And then there's a line very low to the bottom. It's the operating cost of the CID. And there's not a whole lot there, but we'll go through that in a minute. So where are we right now? The CID has the board members, the district members have actually hired or retained an underwriter for the bonds themselves, which right now they're CID bonds, so that's what they do. They're responsible for the underwriting and not the underwriting, but the issuance of these bonds. So they've got their own financial advisor, which is what we do too anyway. The individual they chose is actually working out of Kansas City. We at our firm, we work with him quite a bit in a different capacity. So I know him pretty well. And it was a fairly good selection. But anyway, he's here so he can start putting numbers in paper and seeing what the market can actually sell, which is what his responsibility will be. So that's an exciting benchmark to be able to get over. Now the really kind of, for me, it's exciting because it's numbers. For you, it may be a little drab. But on the far right, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but on the far right are really the 24 budget. The top is the revenues, the bottom of the expenses. And you can see at the very top, the $30 million. This is the bond issue proceeds coming in. And this assumes they're going to be all issued in 1 year. It could be a staged. It just all depends on how that structure is. Right now, it's a placeholder. The sales tax coming in, you can see the 5.5 in 2024 in sales tax. And then there's a couple other things. The interest earnings have obviously really taken off this year. Their proceeds are right now around $10 million, $11 million. Is actually plugged into a 4.5% investment. So they're invested at a high rate. The $10,000 you saw on the very top of Holly's scale, or the buckets, is in there. And then the administrative fee, the actual administrative fee limited 2%. And like she has said, when she says actual, that means the cost that we expend is what gets billed to the CID. And with Cherie's help, that's actually how we're going to do it. And then Paul's fees are probably a little high, but maybe not. The CID wanted to make sure he had enough budget in there to make sure he could still stay on top of what's going to be issued for bonds. He'll be involved in that process. And then the next thing down, $625,000, that's the estimated first interest payment. If we issue, depending on what time of year we issue, if we issue in the spring, there might be an interest payment, so we went ahead and budgeted that anyway. The CID is wanting to put a project integrator in place. I don't disagree with that. This project integrator would help oversee a lot of the project, make sure that the finances or the bills coming in are being spent right, the actual work is being done, and that's actually a pretty good idea. Cost of issuance, the $325,000. It's actually just a percentage estimate of the proceeds. That's anywhere from underwriter fees to municipal advisor fees, bond counsel fees, everything that goes thrown into that. The next thing is McDowell and Creative Design is in that contractual services line at 30,000. Next thing down is the actual capital, 29.9. You can see the 29.9, and just to the left of that is 2.5 million. Together, they make up what Michael's got in his sheet for segments 1 and 2. That's also, the 29 is also the debt service you saw in that line that could be afforded. Next thing down is aquarium payment. This is actually the sales tax attributable to the aquarium and TIF actually goes back over to the aquarium itself. And the final thing is what Holly had mentioned, also the 6.2 million. The only thing I've got to correct on what she had said, she had alluded to the fact that that's operations. It's actually cost attributable by line. Each one of the expenses that make that number up is actually the construction of segment 3. That actually falls down into the same bucket just off to the right of where she was. So without debt proceeds, it comes down to the reimbursement for cost or the cost paid for segments. And that's what this is. And when she had said that this should be paid by now, she's right, because of the way that bucket falls, there's no debt service and there hasn't been. So as collections are received, we're talking about right here today, 2.5 million goes into one bucket, 2.5 goes to the other. And they all flow down to that same reserve at the bottom. And what should have been happening is an amortization that comes out and that paid back as that waterfall and those buckets get filled up. And with the way this has been performing, which is phenomenal for the last 2 to 3 years, it would have easily paid back that 6.2. So in this case, we plugged it in at 6.2. The board saw it, the district saw it when we put it in there. So overall, when you see that green line at the bottom, that's really $271,000 in operating costs. The difference between 2023 and 2024, in 2023, the district paid for maintenance of the whole 6 segments. What the interlocal agreement state, or the cooperative agreement states, is the city's responsible for those costs. So what we've got loaded into the budget you're going to see in a couple weeks is the maintenance of 76 CID, that whole stretch. It's going to be in Michael's budget in this case. So it's all loaded in there into Fund 105, or the transportation fund, where he takes care of maintenance, road maintenance. So I think that is everything I've got, Mayor.
Any members have any questions? Ben, I'd like to make a few comments and just to share with the board at a high level. So please correct me if I'm off.
Absolutely.
On a big picture, the city is using tax dollars towards this, and the CID's collection of the 1% in the district is the bulk of this money.
That's correct.
Huge bulk of it. When the CID goes to get this bond, I wanted the board to know that the city is not taking on an obligation. The CID is taking on the obligation, and it's really designed as a pay-as-you-go, right? So we've had painstaking meetings of how much can that current revenue, with a healthy debt coverage ratio, how much can that revenue support as far as debt? Yeah. And that's the roughly 30 million. When we looked at segments 1 and 2, 1 and 3, or I'm sorry, 1 and 2, right. Yeah. That 30 million is what they're designing and engineering for those segments.
That's right.
So I wanted the board to know that in clearing up some of this language in the agreement, none of us have an interest of going back in time. We've already kicked that can many times. But some things that have come out of that, Ben just mentioned one. In the operating agreement, the city was responsible for doing the maintenance of these segments. And those funds have been paid out of the 76 CID revenues. So we corrected that.
That's correct.
So now You'll see it as a city expense. It should have always been a city expense. There was some discussion about the water lines. The water lines to run the two 12-inch mains up 76 is estimated, give or take, $4 million. The city has agreed to pay that $4 million for the water lines. So the cooperation between the CID board and the city of Branson has really been very cooperative, trying to keep this thing in balance. Thanks to Kathy. Kathy came in new and green and asked silly questions like, what does a cooperative agreement say? And when we started looking at that, we started discovering some things. But I'm saying all that to say, we are really in good shape right now as far as we are following the agreement. City is paying its portion out of our tax dollars. And so on tonight's agenda, we'll be asking this board to approve the, so one thing on the agenda later tonight is we're gonna, on this slide here, one of the agenda items is this board is required to approve this budget, and then it goes to the 76 CID board to approve.
Correct.
And because of the timing, it's real important, so we all stay within our
Right.
contract.
Right.
So I just wanted the board to know that as we're looking at this later on at the board meeting, when this comes up, this is what we're approving. Anybody have any questions?
I just had so to clarify, the 6.2 million, that fully pays the city back.
Right, it does.
And then starting next year, anticipating that being paid back, that's why we're picking up. Because the last couple of years, the operating cost, the CID was paying it, but it was being credited towards the repayment, right?
No, the payment, they paid the actual cost of maintenance, but then on top of that, about $500,000 a year on average was being paid to pay the ultimately the $9 million got paid back through that $500,000. So there's two different lines that got paid out.
Yeah, so Cody, the dot you tried to connect there, it's not that we're repaying, 76 CID maintenance that they have been paying.
Right.
We just, as we agreement, we just cleaned it up, made decisions that was just mutually beneficial with the spirit and intent of, this is a very worthy project, and so we're going down the road hand in hand with this.
Yeah, and you got to remember, this is your project, as in you own it when everybody else walks away. You're responsible repaving all of this, making sure the concrete's straight. It's got to go into your CIP. I say the collective board at the time. It's got to go into your CIP. When I put it on a balance sheet, Sheree puts it on a balance sheet, it's going into your balance sheet, not the CID's. So understand that. That guy's in charge of the entire project and making sure he can pull it off. You guys are in charge of that and make sure that capital project is yours. And obviously, we're excited about getting this moving too.
And I just want to take an extra minute to share with the board. You would all be very impressed with Michael's representing the city as far as he's really the one in charge of all the nuts and bolts and the couplings and the blah, 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 blah. Everything is going into $30 million worth of work, right? But boy, I watch Michael in action and his pencil sharp. He asks a lot of questions, and my comfort level following Michael's lead is very high. Do you agree with that, Kathy?
I appreciate those comments. I want to take just one moment for our fourth speaker, is Ann McDowell from the 76 board, to let her present. We'll be taking down this presentation here, but we can bring it back up if there's any further questions.
Thank you. Hello, Ann. Come razzle dazzle us.
Thanks. I do have some pretty pictures. I like pretty pictures. But I don't know where the clicker is or how to get to them, so. Is that around here somewhere? Oh, that's it, that tiny thing. Okay. I don't need a laser. Okay, just a down button. There I am. There's my first pretty picture. Let me address something, Cody. I think what you might be thinking of is the CID funded the undergrounding of segment 3, and that amount was reduced from the debt that we owed the city. Yeah. That was just because we had the cash and we wanted to get it done, the paying the maintenance was something that we really did to make sure that it was done at a high level. And, you know, I've been around in this project for many years, before most people that are involved in it now, except for Gail Meyer, who couldn't be here today, the chairman of the CID board. And when we were looking at segment 3, we were really thinking of that as the showpiece, right? We wanted everyone to see segment 3 and say, we want all of 76 to look like that, right? So that's why I think initially we said, let's take on and make sure that maintenance is really done well and is focused on by some dedicated employees, et cetera. So yes, we didn't follow the cooperative agreement in that way, but it was for all the right reasons. It was really with good intentions.
Thank
Okay,
you for-
so,
and
I'm
thanks
sorry.
for- That was the 1.8 million that we had.
Yes.
It was 1.8 million to get started, and we used the funds that 76 owed the city for that. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Right, right. So thank you for the chance to address you all today on behalf of the 76 CID Board. Gail Meyer, our chairman, is out of town. Bill Young's with us, but I am the semi-official communications and creative assistant to the board, and I've served in that capacity for about 2 years. So I'm here to address some things that the board would like to share at this point. First of all, really is to say thank you. I go down, right? Yes. For your support of this project. We appreciate having Mayor Milton and Alderman Cooper on the board of the 76 CID, and as well as the administrative team and the staff. They've been diligent, attentive, supportive of this project, and it is much, much appreciated. Our board has also actively engaged additional 76 entertainment district businesses and property owners, plus other expert advisors. There's been about 18 in all who have come to meetings, who have been a part of the planning, because we wanted to assure that there was continuing community support and cooperation. It's not just up to the 76 board and to the Board of Aldermen, but it's a community project and it needs community interaction, and we make sure that those folks get involved and stay involved and are communicated with too. We've sent out a periodic e-newsletter that reaches about 200 additional stakeholders, and I think Holly said at the start there were 36 that formed segment 3. I think there's something in excess of 300 actually property owners now involved in the full annexation of the CID. So there's a lot of businessmen out there, there's a lot of property owners who care about what's going on with this project, and we try to keep them informed. Also, we are vigilant to assure that this important project continues to focus on the original goals and objectives. I feel like we've gotten into the nuts and bolts, as you said, Mayor Milton, and now I'm kind of going back up to the 20,000-foot level, but it's very important that we all understand that this project was a result of a community plan that was done in 2012, and then again of the 76 conceptual master plan for the entertainment district that was done a little bit after that. Since 2012, though, our community has smartly recognized the need to update, improve, and enhance 76, and our primary economic driver and the hub of tourism activity, really for the whole region. I know it drives Branson, but it drives the entire tourism district and the entire region. Our original goals of safety, beautification, and business growth are as critical today, and maybe even more so, as they were 11 years ago. So it is a good path that we started on, even though there have definitely been bumps on the road, as we've all acknowledged and talked about. We've recently taken some extra time, as everyone has mentioned, to carefully consider the project budget, to clarify the various roles and responsibilities. The board is committed to fulfilling the goals of this project while adhering to the cooperative agreement between the 76 ECID and the city of Branson. It's our project, the cities and the CIDs, and neither of us can do this alone. We understand that the city has many large ongoing projects, a wide range of additional responsibilities and requirements every week, every day, every year. I just recently checked, I looked fairly frequently at your project tracker online. I think that's a great resource. There were 42 active projects on that this morning. Everything from $30,000 cars for, officials up to our $30 million project. But please remember that this 76 revitalization project isn't just another project on that list. It's an economic development project. And that's very, very important to our community and to the long-term, there's the button, the long-term vitality of our region. The revitalization is designed to generate additional revenue to the city and is the only city project, as far as we know, with its own singularly dedicated funding stream. Thanks to the property owners in the entertainment district who volunteer to collect the 76 CID tax. So we respectfully ask you to continue to prioritize this stakeholder-funded, revenue-generating project, because when you look at the other 41 on that list, most of them don't generate the revenue that this one will. And as Michael pointed out so lovely too, across from Presley's, that was a vacant lot when we did segment 3, is going to be really producing some tax revenues now. It's needed to assure Branson's prosperity for many years to come. So Mayor Milton has become famous for saying, and Kathy even quoted him today, that the city will move under his leadership at the speed of business. All of you are business owners, so you also know that it's smart business to invest in your revenue-producing assets. We can't lose sight of the fact that the 76 Entertainment District is Branson's #1 revenue-producing asset. And I appreciate Mayor Milton saying at our CID meetings frequently, this is economic development. This is not just a sidewalk project. This is not just a highway project. This is not just put utilities underground and make things look pretty. It's going to build our economy and it's going to build our community for many years to come. So let's keep it strong and let's help it grow together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. Any questions from the board for Ann? Yeah.
Ann? I've heard you express in the past that you didn't like when they said like segment 3 was done, because it's like a long-term project. And that's the way I'm looking at it. This is a long-term project for the infrastructure of this street, the further development. You still feel that way, and that we're always going to be adding on to this. We're always going to be improving this district. And
yeah, I do. And I don't think it was it being done that bothered me as much as folks saying that's all there was going to be. When I talk to people in the community and I say, I'm really excited, the 76 project's really getting going again, they're like, oh, really? We didn't think anything was going to happen to that after it went from Presley's to Ferris wheel. That's really going on still? That's when I get upset, because I'm like, yeah, we've been working so hard to keep this moving. And even though you can't always see shovels moving and dirt, and that's very exciting when we've got that happening on 76. There's been so much going on behind the scenes just to get the annexation done. And don't forget, we've got 2 more segments to annex too. 7 and 8 need to be annexed. That area needs to be developed. I was talking to our representative at an event, Carla Esslinger, not long ago, and said, we're working on this 76 project. Are you familiar with it? And she said, no, but I drove 76, and tell me what's going on in that one spot. And it looks like that's really bad. And I'm like, exactly. We've got to get that whole segment done, all 5 miles from 76 to Shepherd of the Hills Expressway, to really have the entertainment district that this destination deserves.
yeah, I agree, because, for as many wow factors that we have on the Strip, it's going to be judged just as much by the empty spots than it is by the wow factors.
Yeah,
really.
unfortunately, I think that's really true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Are there any questions from any board members to ask our speakers, or ask any general questions? No? Wow. With that, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Did you get that, Hill?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have a motion, and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Ayes have it. And thank you. Bill.